The morning sunlight spilled through the slats of the blinds, slicing the room into streaks of soft gold and shadow. It was the kind of light that whispered of potential, coaxing me to grab my camera and chase the day's fleeting beauty. But today, the camera stayed on my desk, its leather strap curled like a sleeping cat. The agenda was less poetic. Job applications, practical, necessary, and if I'm honest, a little uninspiring. The air in my small apartment was still, carrying the faint aroma of last night's lavender candle and the sharp, grounding scent of freshly brewed coffee. I clutched my mug, settling into the mismatched chair at my makeshift desk. The laptop screen glowed, a blank canvas waiting for me to craft the perfect pitch for yet another cover letter. Outside, the hum of the world drifted through the open window, distant traffic, the chatter of passersby, the occasional bark of a dog. It was the soundtrack of everyday life, and it was oddly comforting. Structure wasn't my strong suit, but I valued it in my own loose way. As an Aquarius, the routine wasn't about repetition, it was about grounding myself just enough to keep my mind from wandering too far. And yet, as I stared at the blinking cursor on my screen, I felt my focus slipping. My thoughts danced between program design concepts, ideas for my animation project, and the way the light outside seemed to hit the corner of the building just so. My mind was like a kite on a breezy day, always drifting but tethered just enough to keep from floating away entirely. I sighed, forcing my attention back to the task at hand. Job hunting wasn't glamorous, but it was a necessary step toward the kind of creative independence I craved. For me, finding a job wasn't just about a paycheck. It was about aligning with something meaningful, something that sparked my curiosity and gave me room to grow. The buzz of my phone jolted me out of my reverie. Patrick's name lit up the screen, and a faint smile tugged at my lips. Over the past few weeks, he had become a steady presence in my life. Not overwhelming, not demanding, but there. His ability to exist in my world without consuming it was something I appreciated deeply. For an Aquarius like me, space wasn't just a preference, it was a necessity. After a brief exchange, we made plans for lunch by the beach. Patrick's easygoing nature fit seamlessly with my love for spontaneity, and I appreciated that he never pushed for more than I was willing to give. Relationships, for me, were about connection, intellectual, creative, and mutual, not about filling a void or meeting an expectation. The hours passed in a blur of typing, clicking, and intermittent daydreaming. By the time I shut my laptop, the sun had climbed higher in the sky, painting the walls with warm, diffuse light. I grabbed my camera, movement always cleared my head, and headed out the door. The streets of my neighborhood felt alive with texture and light. Cracks in the pavement told stories of years gone by, while vibrant bursts of bougainvillea spilled over fences, unapologetically bright against the muted tones of stucco walls. I wandered aimlessly, capturing moments that felt fleeting but important. A shadow bending over a doorway, a cat perched lazily on a windowsill, the glint of sunlight on a puddle from last night's rain. Photography was my meditation, my way of grounding myself in the present while letting my mind roam free. By midday, I found myself at the beachfront cafe where Patrick and I had planned to meet. The air was heavy with the scent of salt and sunscreen, and the rhythmic sound of waves created a soothing backdrop. The cafe was simple, worn wooden tables scattered under a canopy of palm trees, their fronds swaying lazily in the breeze. I chose a seat that faced the shore, where volleyball players shouted and laughed in the distance, their energy vibrant but distant enough not to intrude on my peace. As I waited, I let my thoughts drift again. My friends, the ones who understood my need for independence, were planning a night out downtown. I'd join them later, but for now, this moment was mine. I thought about the balance I'd found between work, creativity, and connection, a delicate dance that felt natural rather than forced. My friendships, like my relationship with Patrick, thrived on this unspoken understanding. We didn't need constant proximity to feel close. When Patrick arrived, his presence was as unassuming as always. He slid into the seat across from me, his camera bag slung casually over his shoulder. I admired how he fit into my life, not as someone who demanded my attention, but as someone who shared in my passions. He didn't need grand gestures or constant validation. He respected my space, and that made his presence all the more meaningful. After lunch, as I walked back toward my apartment, the sun began its slow descent, casting everything in long, honey-colored shadows. The day had been ordinary in many ways, but it was the kind of ordinary that felt full. The kind of ordinary that reminded me why I valued my freedom, my creativity, and my relationships exactly as they were: fluid, unpressured, and authentic. For me, life wasn't about rushing to the next milestone. It was about flowing with the current, capturing the moments that felt significant, and trusting that everything would align in its own time. As I unlocked my door and stepped inside, the light slanting through the blinds painted golden stripes across the floor. I set my camera down on the desk, its familiar weight grounding me. The flow of everyday life wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and for now that was more than enough.